I am David Sorensen from StopWorldControl.com. In this video I present to you truths and realities that are extremely difficult to comprehend. Information that will shock us to the core, because it challenges everything we believe. It turns our world upside down, and it reveals something so evil that it is almost incomprehensible. Yet it is the truth. If we want this world to become a better place, then we cannot afford to deny obvious realities. We must have the courage and the sincerity to face truth. I invite you to have this courage and sincerity when you watch this video. It will be difficult. It will be very challenging. But it will also expose something extremely nefarious in this world that every human being needs to be aware of. Several former members of the Israeli Defense Force have come forth because they are extremely concerned about what is going on in Israel. They testify how the military in Israel is the most advanced high-tech army in the entire world. They also reveal how the borders between Israel and Gaza are the most heavily secured borders anywhere on earth. High-tech sensors alert the Israeli Defense Force from the moment that even a small animal approaches the borders. Yet hundreds of Hamas fighters were not only able to approach the border, but they blew up the fences. They entered Israeli territory and started destroying homes and burning down villages and killing Israeli people without any semblance of defense by the Israeli military. Turns out that shortly before this attack, the government had ordered the removal of all military presence from that area. Hamas was literally given a free pass to enter and start their operation. In the next videos, you will hear former members of the Israeli Defense Force explain that something very, very, very concerning is going on in Israel.
שתפו את הסרטון הזה כמה שיותר, כי תקשיבו רגע, אני שירתתי כסמב"צית חי"ר במהלך מלחמת צוק איתן, אני שירתתי באוגדת עזה. כל השירות שלי היה תומכת לחימה בזמן מלחמת צוק איתן שעזה הייתה באוגדת עזה. תקשיבו לי ותקשיבו לי טוב. אין מצב בעולם שיכולה להיות כזאת התקרבות לגדר, אוקיי? מבלי שאנחנו לא נדע מזה. התצפיתניות יושבות בבונקרים 4 שעות, הן לא יכולות לעשות ככה, הן מול מסך. לא יכול להיות מצב, שום מצב, שהיו מעירים אותי בלילה על יונה, על חסידה שהתקרבה לגדר, על מקק שעבר מתחת לגדר, היו מקפיצים את כל הגזרה. איך נכנסו עם טרקטורים, 400 איש ואף אחד לא שם לב.
October 7th, 2023. This is Efrat Fenigzon and I'm here to share an update from Israel-Hamas war, which started this morning. Apparently, Israeli defense forces that were supposed to be around Gaza were placed around the West Bank because of security concerns, so that the Gaza envelope was left unoccupied with military. They say around 60 to 80% of that area was left without the IDF forces that were supposed to be there. A year ago, there was a military operation in Gaza to prepare for such events, and ongoingly there are trainings for these kind of scenarios. This raises serious questions for me anyway about Israeli intelligence. What happened? 2 years ago, there was a successful deployment of underground barriers with sensors to alert exactly on these kind of terrorist breaches. Israel has one of the most advanced and high-tech armies. How come there was zero response to the border and fence breaching? I cannot understand that. Personally, I served in the IDF 25 years ago in the intelligence forces. There's no way, in my view, that Israel did not know of what's coming. A cat moving alongside the fence is triggering all forces. So this What happened to the strongest army in the world? How come border crossings were wide open? Something is very wrong here. Something is very strange. This chain of events is very unusual and not typical for the Israeli defense system. The current government is highly corrupt in my view, while the previous one was no better. I don't care about having a popular opinion. I care about exposing evil forces wherever and whomever they are. So to me, this surprise attack seems like a planned operation on all fronts. If I was a conspiracy theorist, I would say that this feels like the work of the deep state. It feels like the people of Israel and the people of Palestine have been sold once again to the higher powers that be. At the same time, this is still very, very difficult to fathom.
How come the strongest army, the strongest intelligence, the most sophisticated intelligence in the world, in Israel, makes it possible for few hundred Hamas fighters to enter Israel and make all of this happen, while in that area the Hamas fighters did not meet Israeli army or any defense or any protection or anything, as if the Israeli government was planning to offer the Hamas fighters this whole area on a silver plate. This, is not logical. Israel has the most sophisticated intelligence, has a strong army, the strongest in the Middle East, and allow something like this. So there is more behind it. Israel has sacrificed its own people, sacrificed the civilians on the borders of Gaza, took away the protection, took away the army, and allowed Hamas to do what they did.
The following footage was released by Hamas. Here we can see them place explosives on the fences that are extremely heavily secured with high tech, but not a sign of Israeli response. They blow up the fences on several places. Here you have an aerial view of how they are breaking through and destroying the infrastructure. We can even see how they are literally entering onto Israeli territory with their vehicles full of armed soldiers. And not a single attempt of the Israeli Defense Force to stop them in any way. They literally received a free pass to enter into Israel. They can even drive on the roads of Israel. This is another video released by Hamas showing how they are able to blow up the security fences and enter Israel unhindered. We have to understand that this is not some massive army invading Israel, it's basically a low number of terrorists. The incredible, powerful military of Israel could have stopped them in a breeze, but they didn't. So what is really going on here? Why was there no response from the Israeli Defense Force when armed soldiers from Hamas entered Israeli territory, even blowing up the fences and going deep into Israel and starting to burn down villages and kill people and kidnap people? Why was the Israeli military removed from that whole area right before this attack? Why was the mainstream news media instructed not to be honest to the public, and why did they wait for 12 hours to inform Israel. There is clearly something very, very nefarious going on here, a criminal operation at government level of the worst kind. The question is, what is their agenda? What is the purpose? I believe that the answer is given by this letter that was sent by the government coalition in Israel to Prime Minister Netanyahu. It shows that they demand an immediate invasion into Gaza and a complete seizing of control of that whole area that belonged for the past decades to the Palestinian people. And indeed we see that immediately Israel responds and does something that they have been wanting to do for decades. A complete all-out attack on Gaza, where 2.5 million innocent Palestinian people live. Families like you and me, mummies, daddies, children, grandfathers, grandmothers, just beautiful people. They are being bombarded, they are being murdered en masse. This is homicide of the worst kind. And this invasion by Hamas is the perfect excuse to accomplish this.
بس المربع كله المربع اللي قالوا يخلوه ضربوه.
What every person in the world should know is that more than half of the 2.3 million people in Gaza are children younger than the age of 15. This means that Israel is now bombing more than 1 million young children.
شامل وواسع في هذا المكان، عشرات الصواريخ، تقريبا 50 غارة كانت فجر اليوم على هذا المكان، على بيوت المواطنين.
اسحب شهيد 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 اللي عاش في قلب المخيم، في قلب المخيم. ننقل لكم الصورة من قلب مخيم جبالة. نحن الآن في الترانس تحديدا، شهداء بالعشرات وجرحى. هذا هو ما يحدث الآن في غزة في مخيم جبالة تحديدا. هذا سوبر ماركت رابعة سابقا.
The destruction that is being unleashed on 2.5 million families, mummies, daddies, children, grandfathers, grandmothers, uncles, nieces. I use these words to get my point through. These are people who live there in Gaza, and now Israel is wiping them out. They are destroying thousands and thousands of families under the excuse of a Hamas attack. On top of that, Israel cut off all water, power, gas and food from these 2.5 million people. Here we can see utter darkness in the entire Gaza area. Hundreds of thousands of families have no drinking water, have no electricity, no gas and no food. What is really disturbing is that less than 2 weeks before Israel launched their attack on Gaza with the purpose of permanently eliminating it, Netanyahu showed a map during the General Assembly at the United Nations. This map is called the New Middle East. When you look at Israel, then the Palestinian regions have been completely removed. There is no sign anymore of any Palestinian presence on the map of the New Middle East that Netanyahu showed less than 2 weeks before they launched their attack on Gaza. With every false flag operation, it is always the same principle. Some entity wants to commit a horrendous crime, but they don't want to be blamed for it. So they have to use another entity to shift the blame to. In this case, it is very clear. They use Hamas. Hamas is supposedly the bad actor here. And all Israel does supposedly is defend itself. So now they have the right to do something which they have wanted to do for decades. Completely eradicate the whole Gaza Strip and commit horrendous homicide on the Palestinian people. The next question we then have is, why would Hamas cooperate with Israel? In the next clip we probably find the answer. US Senator Ron Paul exclaimed in the US government that Hamas is actually an organization that is set up by Israel, financed by Israel, to work for Israel.
You know, Hamas, if you look at the history, you'll find out that Hamas was encouraged and really started by Israel because they wanted Hamas to counteract Yasser Arafat.
What Senator Ron Paul said is confirmed by a man called Ronald Bernard. He worked at a high level in the so-called financial elites, the most wealthy and most powerful in this world, who control the world theater behind the scenes. He explains how terrorist organizations are essentially funded by the same sources that also fund the organizations that supposedly fight those terrorists.
Which is not surprising, considering they are involved in the flows of money. Those are your clients. You also have governments to deal with, multinationals. You have to deal with secret services, and what they now call terrorist organizations. You get all of the groups that are involved with the big money as clients. Then you start seeing the connections, so they might be compartmentalized as you just mentioned, regarding knowledge. But because I am in the middle, I see how they relate to another. You see the money coming from this place, then going to that place, etc. You keep gaining information and thereby an overview of what is really going on.
So do you have to serve and keep all of those groups happy, including terrorist organizations? You were trying to keep everybody happy?
Yes.
My God.
That was my job.
Keeping all the balls in the air.
Yes, indeed. So one of the things that I found out, I did not know that before, but now I do, is about secret services. You think they are there to serve and protect a people, country, etc., but they actually turn out to be the criminal organizations, to be more precise. The system is heavily so. We are talking about financing wars, creating wars, so basically creating a lot of misery in this world. So, lots of conflict. And then I think to myself, if only people knew what the world is really like. Secret services will stop at nothing. Nothing. But they also have their flows of money, because if they are trading in drugs or weapons or, for that matter, people, all that money has to go somewhere. Everything has to be financed.
You say if, but you could confirm they are doing this?
All of them? All of them?
You can view the full interview with Ronald Bernard on the website stopworldcontrol.com/Bernard. He explains much more about what's really going on in our world, behind the scenes of the puppet theater that is put up for the public. Because it is a puppet theater indeed.
This surprise attack seems like a planned operation on all fronts.
אין מצב בעולם שיכולה להיות כזאת התקרבות לגדר, אוקיי? מבלי שאנחנו לא נדע מזה.